David Brewster here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Gentle Giant. I've had some requests to feature some music from this legendary but lesser known progressive rock band. And Gentle Giant formed in London, England in 1970. And if you're not really familiar with this band or their name, don't feel bad, because they only existed for 10 years. The band lasted from 1970 until 1980. They released 11 albums during that time, 2 albums in 1972, 18 live albums, and one of those was released, when they were still together. That means 17 live albums after the fact. 14 compilations, 5 box sets, 1 EP. There's definitely a ton of music surrounding Gentle Giant, floating around out there, even though most people on the street have no idea who this band is. Very influential, very important, and definitely been listening to their music for a long time. But the last couple years, I just completely dove into Gentle Giant, Camel, and Goblin. I totally love progressive rock. So over the years, I've turned a lot of friends and students onto this band, and one of the most common questions I receive after the fact is, why does Gentle Giant sound so different, compared to everybody else? And there's a lot of reasons why. And one of the first, reasons is a lot of progressive rock bands are attempting to sound futuristic. These robotic sounds and synthesizers and effects and stuff. But with Gentle Giant, they were going the other direction. They have a lot of medieval and Renaissance and Baroque influences. And their compositional techniques, are outside the box all over the place. The counterpoint and polyrhythms and time signature and key signature changes and stuff like that. But here's an image with some of Gentle Giant's songwriting secrets. So in the guitar department, we have the underappreciated Gary Green, definitely a great guitarist, full of all sorts of things. And he's a multi-instrumentalist. Actually, everybody in Gentle Giant was a multi-instrumentalist. They were constantly switching instruments, and they would play traditionally like a rock band. Then they'd suddenly grab flutes and violins and stuff like that, and cellos or whatever. And that's really interesting because they weren't really, like your stereotypical kind of common rock group. They were very different. And Gary's approach to playing guitar was very different because there's a lot of interplay with the other instruments. And they were passing melodies and riffs and ideas around and harmonizing and all sorts of stuff. Very, very interesting and definitely a great guitarist. So the music and chord-based examples in this episode came from 4 Gentle Giant albums. And like I mentioned during the introduction, they released 11 albums during their career, from 1970 to 1980. But we're just going to look at 4 of those albums. So there's plenty more where this came from. Anyway, here we go. With the opening, that's Allucard from the first Gentle Giant album, and Allucard is Dracula, spelled backwards, and that's just one little hidden Easter egg in Gentle Giant's music. They were hiding stuff like that all over the place. And I was using the Boss OC5 octave pedal, because that single note riff is a guitar and an organ together, so I was trying to mimic that. And we're in D minor, and it's something like this. Single notes, so there's no chords in there, but it is loosely, floating around D minor. And we basically start with this. And we're going to basically do that G to A, C to F, and then grab that D note. And then he starts doing this neighbor tone thing, like lower neighbor tones. And he's basically going along, the 5th fret there on the A, D, and the G, but he's picking up the 4th fret on the way down. And that's basically a neighbor tone like that. It's like a little chromatic note a half step away from the note that you're targeting, like that. And then right there, grab F, and then do it again. Do the neighbor tone. And right there, grab E and bend that up a half step to F. Like that. And then the actual riff starts right there. So do that same move, that G, A, C, F to D, and then you're going to grab A and then hammer on kind of a quick hammer, you know, C to D. Like that. The next time right here, you're just kind of making your way down to that F. Right, and then do the first riff again. And then do that riff 4 more times. And then you start doing these stops. And then the keyboard answers that, and then you do another one. The keyboard answers that, and then you do the keyboard answers that, and you do it 2 more times. And then you start it again, and then you start doing that neighbor tone again. Now after 4 times, there's like a synth solo right there. You're going to do it 4 more times. And then that 4th time right there after that synth solo, bend that F to G. And then you hear this riff. So right there, that G to F, and then that, E flat to D flat, A flat to C. So really interesting riff right there. Do the exact same thing, but now down here. So that C to B flat, A flat to G flat, D flat to F, and then end on G, like that. Really cool song, and I'm a sucker for single note riffs like that, and it just sounds evil, which Dracula spelled backwards better sound pretty evil. Next up's the song Why Not, and this is also from the first Gentle Giant album, and I actually featured this in the Progressive Rock Chords episode of Chordplay from last year, but I like this song, so I wanted to include it again. And it's something like this. Like that. So it actually starts with an organ, kind of quiet. The guitar comes in, and you're going to hit this, higher G, slid down, and grab that lower G like that. And then climb up chromatically B flat, B to C, E flat, and then B flat again right there. And then you start doing this, and you're going to basically grab, G and F sharp. So you're going to kind of play between that G and F sharp. Then come down and grab that B flat to G. So you're kind of flirting with G harmonic minor, that raised 7 with the minor third. Kind of, flirting with it. And that last time right there, just do that F sharp to G back and forth a few times, and then a double stop there on the 3rd fret on the G and the B string. And then do it again. there, you're going to basically do that double stop and then also grab a B right there, a single B with vibrato. And then you start doing this. Now you're going to play with C and B. And then right there, you're going to basically grab that F and bend it to G. And then a B flat to an F power chord. And then do that again. Next up's the song A Cry for Everyone. This came from the album Octopus, and this is the closest that Gentle Giant got to that arena rock, power chord rock sound that was, very common in the 70s. But it's Gentle Giant, so of course it's a little different and kind of weird, but like this. Like that. So it's all power chords, and you're going to start with this A to C, and then it's A, C to E, like that. And then it's D to G, like that. And then A to G, like that. So it's and then it's C to B right there. So it's like the first half of it. And then the second half. So that second half, you're doing this and then chromatically right there, that G, G flat to F. And then that weird little slide F to E. And then it's G to, or F to G. And then E to D right there. So all the way through it like this. Next up's the song 2 Weeks in Spain. This came from the album The Missing Piece, and they're about to release the Steven Wilson remixed version of The Missing Piece. That's in a week or two from now. And this song is actually a great example of Gary Green's guitar style and his guitar playing, because he's constantly weaving and moving between single note melodies and licks and chords. And the second half of this idea, like where it noticeably changes, it's really unusual and interesting. It's really cool. Something like this. Something like that. So it's the single note melody, and everybody's banging on this, but you're doing... Right? So come down that G, F to E, grab that D with some vibrato, and then this A, C to B. And then two power chords there, that C to D. And then do that again. And then do it again. And the last time, so you're doing that melody one time, and then that C to D, and then this F to G right there, like that. And then you hear the change, and he starts doing... a really cool riff. So it's basically like A minor right there in the beginning, that A, B, and C, and then grab that single A right there. And then, so the first time it's single notes, and then it's like kind of partial chord double stops right there. And then right there, so right there, that B, C to D, reach over and grab that C on the G string, and then 2 double stops right there. And little partial chords. And the last time right here. So right there, the last time at the end, when you reach up and grab that C, then you're going to hop over here and grab this B. I'm sorry, this A, and then climb up on the B string rather. And then you end on that A right there. You know, interesting guitar part, and I actually found a live concert of Gentle Giant, you know, playing this, and I could really hear and see what Gary did in that song. The studio version, you can hear it, but the live version, you could really hear it and obviously see it too. Next up, this is from the song Freehand from the album by the same name. And after the intro part and then that funky organ comes in, you're going to hear this guitar riff. And this is another great example of Gary Green's guitar playing, this kind of ensemble, you know, playing where all the pieces come together and they make really cool songs like this. Short and sweet right there, and we're in F sharp, and he basically slides this E to F sharp, and then you're grabbing these double stops, you know, on the 5th fret and the 2nd fret on the B and the high E, like that, and then slide these double stops right here, little partial chords, like part of an E5 to F sharp 5, and then right there it's part of A5, like that. So it's all these kind of upper extensions of those chords, like that. And then the single notes, like that. Now last time right there, do this, and then that E to F sharp. And that's really interesting the way, you know, Gary's part kind of comes together with the other instruments and their music. And like I mentioned earlier, it's almost like, you know, pieces of a puzzle coming together, and you hear those separate instruments, you know, on their own, and they sound cool, but then you put all those parts together and instruments together, and you have this huge, like, glorious sound, which is so cool. All right, last but not least, this is Advent of Panurge, and this came from the album Octopus, and this is arguably Gentle Giant's most popular or famous song. Even though it wasn't a hit, it wasn't on the singles charts or anything like that, it's just known among musicians and prog rock fans. And I'm not gonna lie, this is very difficult, very, you know, abstract and interesting, but it's really hard. And I had no, you know, transcription to go by. I had really nothing to go by other than finding some live footage of Gentle Giant, and I could actually see Gary kind of play this, even though it wasn't really that clear. It definitely was not a close-up. But he's playing, you know, the chords in this higher, you know, reaches of the fretboard like that. And everybody's kind of banging on this part. But something like this. Something like that. One more time. And I'm not going to claim that this is 100% accurate or note for note. I'm just kind of guesstimating, but that's what it sounds like. So I was using the visual of seeing Gary, you know, playing it on stage, even though it seemed a little bit different. And then just sitting there listening to it, and I was very closely listening to it. And that's what I found. So it starts here. That's actually an organ, technically, but... And then you hear these chord hits, and like I said, everybody's hitting this, and it's really erratic and strange. Well, we've got this. And you can think of that right off the bat like an E sus2. And then you're going to move up and grab that. And that's like an E minor add 11 implied. I'm relating all these to E, by the way. So E sus2, E minor add 11. And then lower that G to F sharp, and now it's an E sus4 add 9. Like that. So... And then right there, you're going to grab that F sharp and put it on the bottom. So it's still E sus4 add 9 like that. So that's really unusual. Here, here, over there. And then right there, that's like an E7 sus4. Like that. Think Steve Vai. I think Vai likes that chord a lot. So right there, one more time, all the way through this. To here, to here, to here, to here. And that last chord in the cycle right there, that's an E major 13 sus2, like that. And you kind of let that ring finally, because you got all these hits. And let that ring, E major 13 sus2. And then you hear these like flat 5 chords. There's a C sharp flat 5, and then a D sharp flat 5, and then an E5 right there. So all the way through that part. And then you hear this really interesting, just otherworldly lick. It reminds me of like Steve Howe from Yes, big time. Think like Closer to the Edge and some of that. And right there, it's it's E to B and then the open B string, and then fret this E and then the open B string, and then this F to the low E open. What a cool little riff. So one more time all the way through this. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Gentle Giant. Definitely a very inspiring and interesting and totally different band. I mean, talk about left field and outside the box, information. I mean, there's nothing normal or common or ordinary about Gentle Giant. And that was like the whole point, too. Like, they didn't want to be a pop band. They didn't want to write, bubblegum pop songs. They were really trying to stretch music and push music forward in applying classical techniques and compositional ideas to rock, not to mention jazz ideas thrown in the mix and all sorts of stuff. And the fact the entire band were multi-instrumentalists. They could switch instruments and grab, a flute or a violin or whatever. And that's really interesting, to notice, a band that's not really worried about Billboard charts or hits or trying to be famous or whatever. It's like, no, they were purely interested in the art and the music for music's sake. And if people liked it, great. And if people didn't, they didn't really seem to care. And even though the band only lasted for 10 years, it is like this secret club. Like, if you really get into Gentle Giant, it really does seem like you're part of this fraternity or this club. Like, yeah, because most people have no idea who this band is. And I've had some of the most interesting conversations talking about Gentle Giant, Camel, and Goblin, especially in recent years. I love this stuff. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Land Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.